Hello dear students, welcome you all to our class. Today we are going to deal with the second part of the lesson, Weathering the Storm in Ersama. And this lesson was written by Harsh Mander. In the last class we have seen that it just gives a glimpse of a real life incident that happened in the year 1999 on October 27. A super cyclone affected the coastal town of Orissa. And we see that the narrator or the protagonist Prasanth visited this Ersama to meet one of his friend and to stay there for a day. But what happened? As this super cyclone unexpectedly affected this Ersama, it was just raining for about 36 hours continuously, and we see that the storm and the rain have driven away many houses and lives, and the dead bodies of human beings as well as the carcass of the dead bodies of the animals were also seen floating here and there. But we see that Prashanth, after spending 2 days with his friend's family on the roof of their house, decided to go back on the third day when the rain receded or the water receded. But we see that these family members were just trying to console him to stay there for 2 more days. But he was adamant enough to meet his family members because he was very much doubtful about the survival of his family members. Already we have seen that he lost his mother 7 years before. So now he was very eager to see his siblings as well as his relatives. So he decided to go back to his own village, which is 18 kilometers away from this Ersama. Okay, now take your textbook and let's continue the rest of the portion. He equipped himself with a long sturdy stick and then started on his 18-kilometer expedition back to his village through the swollen flood waters. It was a journey he would never forget. He constantly had to use his stick to locate the road to determine where the water was most shallow. At places it was waist deep and progress was slow. At several points he lost the road and had to swim. After some distance he was relieved to find 2 friends of his uncle who were also returning to the village. They decided to move ahead together. So in this paragraph we see that Prashanth was getting ready to go to his village. So what we see here is, irrespective of the heavy flood, even though the friend's family just beckoned him to stay behind for 2-3 days, but he was very much stubborn enough to go to his own village. So he was ready with a long and sturdy stick, okay, a long and a strong stick to help himself drive or to float, just to move on this flooded area. And we see that Prashanth says that when he started his journey, expedition here means long journey, okay. So because 18 kilometers he wanted to overcome, and that too in flood. So it will be very difficult for him to go. Anyhow, Prashanth seemed getting ready to move along to his hometown. Okay, so here we see that as he was just stubborn enough to move, he had a sturdy stick, long and a strong stick to locate the road, the position of the road, to see whether any digging was there or to see whether the water is shallow enough to know the height of the water, the road level. So anyhow, he used this stick to move ahead, okay. And he says that this is a journey that he will never forget. This is one of the, first kind of experience that is this Prashanth had. He wanted to reach his village. That was his only intention. So he was not looking at how the water level is, and likewise. And says that at some point of the way it was shallow, some point it was waist deep, and some place it was hard for him to walk, so he used to swim. And he just realized the depth of the water as well as the condition of the road, the level of water, with the help of this stick. So as he was just moving, when he reached several points, we see that sometimes he used to miss the road. He doesn't know whether it is road or whether it is any slum places likewise. So he used to swim also. So, and we see that as he was just moving likewise, on the way he met 2 of his uncle's friend. And that might be a great relief for this Prashanth, because they were also moving ahead towards their village. Now Prashanth has got 2 friends of his uncle. Okay, so three of them decided to move together to their own village. Then, as they waded through the waters, the scenes they witnessed grew more and more macabre. They had to push away many human bodies, men, women, children, and carcasses of dogs, goats, cattle that the current swept against them as they moved ahead. In every village that they passed, they could barely see a house standing. Prashant now swept out loud and long. He was sure that his family could not have survived this catastrophe. So now here we see that once this Prashant, along with his uncle's friend, as they were just moving, here we see that the sights they have seen was very horrible or drastic scenes. What are the scenes? It says that they are just moving forward and the current of the water, the flow of the water was against them. And as it was just, the current of the flow is too deep. And also we see that along with the flow of the water, what all things are just floating? Dead bodies. Dead bodies of what? Dead bodies of human beings, says the dead bodies of man, woman, children, and also the dead bodies of dogs, cattle, goats, everything just moves on. Can you just imagine how the mental situation of this Prashant will be? They were just making a mental strength to move forward, irrespective of all these drastic, horrible signs. Okay? And it says it's a macabre. Macabre means what? Horrible sights they are seeing. Something terrifying. At some point of time, they thought that they are also going to die. Moving along with dead bodies is a terrible, horrible sight and experience for this Prashant. That's why it says that it's one of the unforgettable situations that Prashant had met. And now, here it says that on the way they have covered, they had need to pass how many kilometers? 18 kilometers. So, they passed different villages, different places. And here Prashant says that they very hardly see houses standing. That means almost all the houses were carried on by the flood, the storm. Okay. And they couldn't even see a house there on the way. Everything got devastated, destructed. Okay. And seeing the situation, the horrible sight, our little Prashant or young Prashant started crying aloud for a long time. He was just thinking about his own family as they were moving forward very nearer and nearer to their village. They could see that no signs of life were seen all over there. So that terrified this Prashant and he started crying aloud for a long time as he along with the friends of his uncle was moving forward. Thinking about his family. He was sure about one thing. If this is going to be the situation as I'm going to move forward, definitely my family wouldn't have survived. So that thought just created a thought of what? A thought of sadness in the mind of this Prashant. That's why he cried aloud for a long time. Okay. So now coming to the next paragraph. Eventually Prashant reached his village, Kalikuda. His heart went cold. Where their home once stood, there were only remnants of its roof. Some of their belongings were caught, mangled and twisted in the branches of the trees, just visible above the dark waters. Young Prashant decided to go to the Red Cross shelter to look for his family. So once here we see that somehow he managed to reach to his village. What was the name of the village? The name of the village is Kalikuda. Okay. In this Kalikuda, once he reached, he spotted the place where his house once stood. But what can be seen then? Only the remnants. What is remnants? Remnants means the remains of the house. That shows that this place was also badly affected by the super cyclone. Because they were staying in a coastal area, very near to Bay of Bengal. So here we see that the place where their house stood, only the remains of the house can be seen. That too what? Hanging on the tree branches here and there. And definitely his heart might have broken thinking about the lives of his family members. And he doesn't have the courage to stand there for a long time. He felt so weak. He was numb. Numb means what? He can't do anything. He lost all mental, physical strength to see the remains of this house stuck in the tree above the flood affected area, above the water. And all the houses were washed away. So immediately he thought of finding the help of Red Cross Society. He wanted to see whether his family members were taken to the shelter of the Red Cross. Red Cross is a voluntary social service society, okay, conducted or organization led by a group of people. So definitely this Red Cross Society might have given shelter for the people somewhere all over there. He decided to go and have a look at that shelter. See, anyhow, we see that this young Prashanth was fully he was mentally prepared to meet. He made sure that somehow I wanted to reach in my village. I wanted to know whether my family members are safe or not. Once he reached his village Kalikuda, he was not sure whether his family members are not other. Okay. Next, coming the first people he saw in the crowd was his maternal grandmother. Weak with hunger, she rushed to him, her hands outstretched, her eyes brimming. It was a miracle. They had long given him up for dead. Quickly, word spread and his extended family gathered round him and hugged him tight in relief. Prashanth anxiously scanned the motley, battered group. His brother and sister, his uncles and aunts, they all seemed to be there. Okay, so now what we see here is Prashanth once he sought the help of this Red Cross Society, they managed to take him to where? To the shelter. So once he reached the shelter of this Red Cross Society, the first person that he met in the shelter is his maternal grandmother. Maternal grandmother means mother's mother. You can just imagine the emotional situation both this Prashanth and his grandmother had. And once all of a sudden, when his grandmother saw this Prashanth there, she ran towards him. We see that she was just hugging the grandson with great love. And this Prashanth was looking at this grandmother. She was so weak with hunger. She was dull, tired. But she was not at all thinking about her physical condition. She ran to him. She hugged him with a lot of love. A great smile and a shine on his eyes was just glimmering. Because you know that just like this Prashanth, these family members also thought about this Prashanth. They might have thought that he could have lost his life in Ersama. So immediately what we see there is soon his arrival, this message of his arrival spread among his family members, his relatives. So once they happened to hear the arrival of Prashanth, they all gathered together. They all came. They all hugged him severely, very tightly. That was a great hug of relief because they thought that Prashanth might have died in Ersama. And in this strenuous situation, it was very hard for a young person to survive. Somehow he managed to come back. He looked around everyone to see all his family members, his uncles, his aunts, his siblings, brothers, sisters. They were all looking so tired, weak, battered. Battered means what? Tired, motley, injured and all. Okay, so they were all tired, weak, injured, but all are safe. Now Prashanth, along with his family members, relatives, just had a time of relief because no one lost their life. The tenacity that was shown by this Prashanth was highly appreciable. He moved from a place called Ersama to his own place, Kalikuda, 18 kilometers, just driving very hard, overcoming this strenuous situation of this flood-affected area. Okay, let's see what's going to happen next. By the next morning, as he took in the desperate situation in the shelter, he decided to get a grip over himself. He sensed a deathly grief settling upon the 2,500 strong crowd in the shelter. 86 lives were lost in the village. All the 96 houses had been washed away. It was their fourth day at the shelter. So far they had survived on green coconuts. But there were too few to go round such a tumult of people. So what we see here is this Prashanth, once he reached in his hometown, here we see that once after meeting his parents, after seeing his family members, he was very happy and he also went to be with them in their shelter in Red Cross. Okay, and here we say that the next morning Prashant realized that he need to get over this emotion. What is the emotion? Actually, people were very sad about losing their things, about losing their friends, family members in this super cyclone. He was also very sad. He had also seen dreadful things on the way. Now he remembers that no, I shouldn't be like this. I should change my mentality. So he realized that he had to get over his emotion and take charge over the situation. Should do some duty. He had something to do for the people. And already we have seen that they were in this shelter of this Red Cross society. How many people were said to be here? 2,500 people. Okay. And around in the flood, from their village, 86 people died in the flood. And all the 96 houses had been washed away also. Okay. Can you just imagine all these things happened because of the super cyclone. They had been sheltered where? In the Red Cross Society for the last 4 days. And in the last 4 days, they were eating only one thing. What is that? Raw coconut. They were eating only raw coconut, but these were insufficient, not at all able to fulfill the bellies of these 2,500 people. So it was a very pathetic situation. Okay. So Prashant thought that I should take duty. I should take charge of this situation. Something should be done. Prashant, all of 19 years, decided to step in as a leader of this village if no one else did. He organized a group of youth and elders to jointly pressurize the merchant once again to part with the rice. This time the delegation succeeded and returned triumphant, wading through the receding waters with fled for the entire shelter. No one cared that rice was already rooting. Branches from the fallen trees were gathered to light a reluctant and snow-flow fire on which to cook rice. For the first time in 4 days, the survivors at the cyclone shelter were able to fill their bellies. His next task was to organize a team of youth volunteers to clean the shelter of filth, urine, vomit and clotting carcasses, and to tend to the wounds and the fractures of many who had been injured. So what we here see is he, along with the friends, thought of doing voluntary service. So already we have seen that this Prashant thought of taking control or charge over the situation. Okay. Now he decided to work for the flood affected people. Around 2,500 people were here. And now talking about Prashant, he was an youngster. What was the age of Prashant? He was only 19 years of age. Okay. In this 19 years of age, he was doing a great thing of helping people in the shelter. Okay. He need to find food for them. For the last 4 days, they were eating only what? Raw coconut. Now he formed a group of villagers, including the elders as well as the youth. And they planned to force the local merchant to give food grains. They somehow managed to reach the nearby shop, nearby merchant, and they just forced the merchant to give some rice. Because they can't survive anymore. Already 86 people died. They can't see any more death. So they force the merchants of that place to give rice. Okay. Anyhow, they gathered some stock of grains and they took this rice to feed the people. Somehow they were swimming in the flood to get food for the crowd. And apart from that, we see that this rice was getting rotten. Because of the flood. You can just imagine what happened when our place also got affected by flood. The rice was getting rotten. Rotten means what? Getting in a worse condition. But these people was not at all bothered whether the rice was good or not. Somehow they wanted to eat something because they were starving. Okay. So what they did? They took the branches of the broken trees. Then they thought of just to kindle a fire. They were all wet, but it was very hard for them to get it burned. Okay, somehow they managed to lit fire and they cooked their first meal in 4 days. See, actually Prashant should be credited. The deed that he has done for these people. He managed to organize youngsters and adults, they managed to force the merchant to give rice. Now they were just trying to cook this rice, and for the first time in 4 days, these people were given what? Rice to eat. It was a slow fire because everything was wet. Somehow they managed to cook the food in 4 days, and here we see that the survivors ate a meal after 4 days. They managed to give, somehow they managed to give the food to all the people. Okay, then the next thing that Prashanth did was he organized another team of youth to clean the shelter. You know that how many people were there? 2,500. It was a very big number of people, isn't it? A lot of people there. So voluntarily these youngsters now started cleaning their shelter, cleaning the place where they are staying. What all the things? Here it says that it was filled with urine, then garbages, then dead bodies, then many people were injured. Anyhow, the dead bodies of the animals just floating here and there. So everything with the leadership of this Prashanth, they cleaned. Apart from cleaning, they managed to tend the wounded and the injured people also. Okay, tend means here to serve by cleaning the wound, by giving medication. No, medication might be there. Anyhow, they managed to clean the wounds and the injured people. So here we see that this Prashanth, when he took the leadership voluntarily in this crucial situation, these people at least could get food once in 4 days. And also this youth volunteers started cleaning the shelter and the filthy things that they found, especially the urine as well as the excretory waste of human being, and also the dead bodies that were seen here and there. They also managed to take much care about the wounded and injured people. Okay. On the 5th day, a military helicopter flew over the shelter and dropped some food parcels. Then it did not return. The youth task force gathered empty utensils from the shelter. Then they reputed the children to lie in the sand left by the waters round the shelter with these utensils on their stomach to communicate to the passing helicopters that they were hungry. The message got through, and after that the helicopter made regular rounds of the shelter, airdropping food and other basic needs. Now what happened? On the 5th day, what happened? They got food dropped from the helicopter. Okay? Helicopter came and dropped some food. But after that it did not return. What happened? The youth did another thing. They assigned small children to lie down on the sand with utensils on their stomach. In your textbook, if you see, the picture is given very clearly. Okay. Then they deputed means they assigned the children, because only on the 5th day, 4th day they prepared meal. 5th day they got parcel from the aeroplane. But after that the helicopter didn't arrive. So what happened? Helicopter didn't arrive. And so they arranged the small children to lie on the sand, placing empty vessel plate on the stomach and lied on the ground. Okay. So likewise, the passing helicopters can see the crucial situation of the children. And once the helicopters got this message, they started coming again to drop food for the people. Okay, they returned with food and other necessity things for the crowd at the shelter. Okay, so anyhow, this Prashanth's idea of making the children lie on the ground with empty vessels worked, and they started getting food regularly hereafter. I think we can stop here for today. Okay, that's all for today's class. Have a great day. God bless you. Thank you.